fellas, let's go. Here we go. Big play. Trips open right, 334 stretch, Z post, X stop, on two. Ready?
This is my dad's show.
It's called the Quarterback Dadcast.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox with the Quarterback Dadcast. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, thanks to all of our sponsors for all your support. We are continuing to enjoy this journey together, inspiring dads, but I want to take a minute now to talk about Acme Homes. You've heard me talk about them before, but I'm going to talk about them again. Bob Cumming, former college teammate, amazing leader, amazing home builder. They continue to take so much pride in the work they do, the craftsmanship, the attention to detail. Whether you're looking for a home up in Monroe, up in Sultan, up in Wenatchee, this is where they're doing their amazing things. So many people during the pandemic, as we have the ability to work from home, have decided to move out of the city to try to find homes where there's more acreage. Well, that's exactly what Bob and team at Acme Homes give you. So check out Valley Vista up in Monroe. Check out Daisy Meadows out in Sultan. And if you want to even go to Eastern Washington, check out Sienna Heights in Wenatchee. They're, again, amazing craftsmanship, amazing floor plans. You can visit them at acmehomeswa.com. And if you're interested in learning specifically about listings or mortgage opportunities, contact Jen at 425-308-8082 or Denise at 425-309-2318. So now, why are we doing a new ad? Because we want to talk about a partnership they have with Portage Bank. Kevin Jensen is one of the great lenders over there. He's the senior vice president. He's going to take care of you. And right now, if you obtain a mortgage through Portage Bank, Bob and team at Acme Homes are going to pay your $500 appraisal fee. I said that right. They're going to pay your $500 appraisal fee by buying a home through them, getting your mortgage through the folks at Portage Bank. So don't wait. Now's the time to contact Jen, contact Denise. Again, Jen's number is 425-308-8082. And again, Denise is at 425-309-2318. Visit acmehomeswa.com right now. Don't wait. Thank you again for listening to the Quarterback Dadcast. So with that, let's get right to today's episode. Well, hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox again with the Quarterback Dadcast, and I'm excited to bring on a fellow Wildcat, a newer Wildcat, to the show. Our next guest, his name's Paul Elstone. He comes from University of Liverpool and then spent 18 years as an Oregon Duck, and now he's a proud Wildcat. He's the new vice president of university advancement for my beloved alma mater, Central Washinton University. I'm the only one that calls it the Harvard of the West Coast. We're building momentum on that legacy, but that's not why we're going to have Paul on. We're going to talk about to Paul the dad. We're going to talk about Paul, how Paul has worked hard and is still working hard to be that ultimate leader of his home. And he's going to share some dad wisdom for us. But without further ado, Mr. Paul Elstone, welcome to the Quarterback Dadcast.
Well, thank you, Casey. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really enjoying my time as a Wildcat and getting to know you as well. So thanks for having me.
You bet. And for everybody at home, we are recording on September 27th. Yesterday was September 26th. Obviously, I was not going to bring this up, but Paul just did. He brought up the Ryder Cup. I wasn't going to talk about it, but he decided to do it. And I graciously, we just got done talking about it, but I'm not going to start any USA chants, Paul, just to make sure I clear that right now.
I think we will allow you to do it one time today, and you earned it yesterday, and the USA team did great. So Europe will be back in 2 years, I'm sure.
You know what I got? I'm a Patty Harrington fan. Talk about a gracious. I mean, he took every interview. That's like sportsmanship to multiple levels. I was very impressed with him.
Well, and they just announced that new Nicholas Jacqueline Sportsmanship Award. I thought was pretty good, the history of that and how that event has been, a great showcase for sportsmanship. Mostly over the years, it's been good.
Yeah. Well, we always start each show, Paul, with what do you? I want to know, what are you most grateful for as a father today?
I have 4 children, 2 just coming out of college and 2 in college. And I'm just so grateful that they are healthy and happy with where they are in their lives, learning, doing things that they enjoy. And they're not always, things that they thought they might be doing or things I thought they might be doing, but they are in a good place. And so I'm just really grateful that they are happy and healthy and living their best lives.
I love that. I love what you said, learning to do what they want to do, not what you maybe thought you would do. I want to make sure we hit on that. 'Cause we've talked about that topic a lot on previous episodes on making sure we love kids where they are, not where we want them to go. And I'm gonna go on a similar thing. I'm grateful for that exact thing. My daughter she had a basketball tournament this weekend with a brand new team. Didn't know a lot of the players, didn't really know the coach. And I was so grateful for her stoicism and toughness. It's so fun to watch. I told her that I'm just so grateful to be able to have the opportunity. Then I'm grateful for, I played golf with my son this weekend too. And that's his sport. He's really coming into it. He plays hoops too, but I think golf he's definitely got an opportunity to do something with that sport. And it's fun to watch him, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to play with him. So that's what I'm grateful for today. So you got 4 kids in college. Maybe talk a little bit about what life looks like right now. Maybe tell us a little bit about your kids, where they're at, what they're studying, and what they're doing now.
Yeah, so actually 2 out of college and 2 in college. So my oldest graduated from Oregon State a couple of years ago. She was an anthropology major. And my other 3 kids are all sports, but she was dance all the way. Not really into sports, but ballet and then ballroom dancing. Was actually a professional ballroom dancer while she was a college student. So she would go on tour in the winter term throughout the southwest part of the U.S. and then take classes in summer to kind of keep on track to graduate.
Wow.
So she's been a dancer her whole life. One of my greatest memories of kind of watching her dance was not all the performances I've seen her do, which have been many, but I just remember one time on a cold, rainy night when I was picking her up from practice one time, and we were watching her practice, and she didn't know some of the parents were watching, but the joy on her face as she was just doing her dance in her practice, it was just a wonderful thing. I'll always remember it. And so she's just loved dance her whole life. So she's now living in Denver, Colorado. She moved out there about 6 or 7 months ago. She's working in the mortgage industry, enjoying life, loving being in Denver. And then she's teaching in a dance studio as well, part-time. So she's having a great time. And I went to see her a couple of weeks ago for the first time, and it was really fun to see her really enjoying that new life that she's building out there.
Very cool.
My son graduated from Oregon just in the summer, so he and his sister have a lot of fights over that rivalry. But he's living in Portland. He's working for a shipping logistics firm. He got an entry-level sales job there. And he is just so motivated to build his base of customers. He is getting in the office at 4:35 in the morning, he tells me, to really get out of this 6-month training program that they're in as quickly as he can so he can get going on his career. And he's just loving it. It's a great kind of work hard, play hard kind of culture, it sounds like. And he's doing very well. Got his own apartment in Portland, so that's great. And then I have twin girls. They're both sophomores in college. They are basketball players. So one is at Lewis and Clark in Portland, and one is at Knox College in Illinois. And one wanted to stay close to home in the Northwest, and one wanted to get out. So she's in Illinois. They are learning to live apart, I think. They've always been together. All their friends are the same, so they're learning about separate lives. I think they're in touch on social media and FaceTime multiple times a day. But it's great to see them thriving. Obviously, last year as a college freshman was really hard for students all over the country, all over the world. But they are getting that experience this year and really liking things. So we have a very lively household when we get together. They're a lot of fun. And having kids this age where they're starting to really learn about life and have their own opinions, and we can have vibrant discussions around the dinner table. It's a lot of fun.
Wow. Now, are they still playing hoops in college?
Yeah, so they didn't play much last year, of course, but they're going to start playing, later on this term, so that they'll have a season this year. Yeah.
Wow, that's very cool. Very cool. What? And are they identical twins?
The twins are not identical. No, fraternal.
Okay.
I don't think they look alike. Some people think they do, but we've probably seen them enough that we can tell them apart.
Now, do twins run in your family?
They did not really. We found that my grandfather was one of 10, and so he had a couple of twin sisters, but we didn't know them. We didn't know that until after we found out we were having the twins. So not really. That was a bit of a surprise.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, take me back to life growing up for Paul and talk about what that was like, and maybe share how did your parents, shape you, and talk about some lessons that you learned from them and how you raised your kids.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town called Grantham in England. It's about 100 miles north of London, 20, 25,000 people. My parents really left school, both of them left school at age 16. So a lot of people did that in the UK at that time. No one really in my family had been to college. My uncle ended up going to college kind of part-time in the evenings. But being in college was not something that people had done in my family. But my parents, my dad worked kind of a blue collar job, factory worker. My mom was kind of a typist and an administrative assistant. But they did instill in us the importance of education, and from a very early age, even though they didn't go to college, they wanted to make sure that they wanted us to do that, or that we would have that option. The system of kind of high schools in England is a little different. I had to pass an exam when I was 11 years old to get to the kind of the best school in town. I guess they don't really do that much now. But it was a very stressful moment for my parents to say, was I going to be able to pass that exam? So I did pass that exam. So did my brother, thankfully. So I ended up going to it's kind of like a Harry Potter type school. It was an all boys school from age 11 to 18, wearing uniforms, black suit and tie. It's a public school, but it was in that kind of system. So it was kind of a stricter, kind of regimen. It was great from an educational perspective. I'd say it wasn't so great from a kind of a whole person perspective. So there's pros and cons to that type of experience, but it was really important for them that we get that kind of high level education. We were able to get into college, both of us, through that as well. So that was one of the most important things that they gave to us, is that kind of focus on education. And even though they didn't have that college experience, making sure that we had that opportunity. One of the other things that they really did, and my dad lived in the same town his whole life. Both my parents have passed away now, but they both lived in the same town their whole lives. And I've obviously lived a very different life, moving to the US, and I lived in Japan for a few years as well. But they gave me this kind of nugget of kind of a global perspective on the world, on life. And so I remember that in fifth grade, there was an opportunity to go on a school trip to Belgium. And so, going to Belgium from England, where I lived, is probably like going from here to, California. It's in terms of physical distance, it's not that far. But, when you're growing up in a small town in England, you go to a different country, it gives you a kind of a different sense of kind of how things might be different. And so, we didn't go on a family vacation that year because they wanted to send me on this school trip to Belgium. And they did the same for my brother a couple of years later to the Netherlands. And they thought it was really important that we had that opportunity to learn about the world and learn about different countries and cultures. And that's something that I've also taken through my life and lived that way a little bit. All four of my kids went through the International High School International Baccalaureate program when they grew up in high school in Eugene. And that really gives people a wonderful global perspective on life and understanding different cultures and countries. And so I really credit my parents, with that small nugget. Even though they didn't live that life, they gave me the opportunity to do that and pass that on to my kids. So there's a couple of things that were really important to me that I learned from them growing up.
That's really cool. Tell me, where do you think that? It's you think back, like, God, a guy who spent his entire career in education, family doesn't come from education. Like, where does that, but maybe tell me where do you think that wisdom from your parents came from, and what maybe motivated them to give you that opportunity when they didn't have it for themselves?
I think that they see, and this is something I believe my whole career, and they saw it as well, that education can be kind of the ticket, to a better life. My dad, worked blue collar jobs in factories, got laid off at some point. It was hard. I don't think that, he was doing for most of his life the kind of work that he wanted to do. He didn't have the options that he maybe wanted. And so he wanted for my brother and I those options to be able to do different things. And he never, neither of my parents never really pushed us to do, to study certain subjects or to do certain careers or to do certain things. They were wonderful in that they just said, just get the education and then you will have the options. We talk about that a lot these days with different types of students. A lot of people want to do business, and business can be great, but liberal arts and different topics that you study can be really helpful and really help you think differently and be a critical thinker, be a good communicator. So it really is less important about what you study, but the fact that you do study and you learn how to study. That's what's important, and they gave us that, and it was really a wonderful gift.
I love that you're making me think of a quote that I highlighted in a book. So when I wrote my book, I came across a guy named Orison Swett Martin, who wrote, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he wrote a book back in the 1800s. He's a very revolutionary dude back in the day. He wrote a book called Pushing to the Front. And it's so much wisdom. His book went on to be like one of the best self-investment, self-help books of all time back during his generation. Presidents backed it. I'm actually reading it now because I used it as reference when I wrote my book. But he said, a man can have all the education in the world, but if he doesn't know how to apply it, what is it worth? And I think what you just said you made me think of that, because I think too often people go down the path, I got to do this or I have to do that. But like maybe someone is a liberal arts major, but ends up using it to become a lawyer or a doctor. It doesn't matter what, I think for me, power of education for me really taught me stick to something, time management, organization. I finished something. I couldn't just quit. And that just those small principles helped me, I think, later in life. I don't know. I just wanted to share that because it came to the top of my head.
I think that's absolutely right. The idea of kind of sticking with it and not quitting, that's part of education, but it's also part of sports. Mm-hmm. That's something that my dad talked to me a lot, and I've talked to my kids about as well, is that, they've tried a lot of different sports, a lot of different activities, and many of them you don't end up wanting to do, right? But you don't quit in the middle of the season. You can quit at the end because you don't like it anymore. But we all, there were a couple of times when they decided they didn't want to do something. And, the 6 or 7 week season sounds like it's a long time to them, but it's not that long. But your teammates are relying on you, and you signed up, and you should see that through to the end, and then you move on. And those are some conversations we've had that I think have been valuable for them.
So good. You said something in the open. You said, loving the joy about your kids, talking about what they do might not always been what you wanted them to do, or I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's something that I see a lot of parents struggle with. And I was guilty of it earlier, where I was, you see, because we have this years of wisdom, we see what's possible. Sometimes you don't want to be on the same path, but the failure is how they learn, and the adversity is how they learn. And one of my great quotes I learned from a guy named Paul Bennett, from the coach of Virginia. He said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, adversity is life's golden ticket. So maybe share with us, when your kids were growing up, how did you, some lessons learned, some ups, some downs, how did you go through that? And what advice maybe would you give to dads at home as they're about to embark on that journey?
Yeah, I think so many kids and parents have been through times when you wanted to be on a certain team, or you wanted to get a part in a dance show or a play, or your kids did, and you wanted that for them, and they didn't get that opportunity. And so, probably a parent's first instinct is to go talk to the coach or to go talk to the director and say, you can't, my son, my daughter, you're not seeing their potential. What can you do? But we really have to stop ourselves from doing that. And even though it's hard in the moment, we've had some tears and some moments where they really wanted something and they didn't get it. But that's a valuable moment for them to understand that you're not going to get everything in life, and there are going to be times when you have to get through that sometimes. And so whether that's the job you want to get later on, or relationships you want to be in or whatever it is. But that's how they learn, is not getting that part or getting on that team. And so, it's a lot harder to do. It's a lot easier to get by when you do get the part sometimes, or you do get on the team and you want to have that fun. So hopefully a balance can be struck there. But we've had some moments there that were difficult, but I think important. We never talk to the coaches or the directors. I mean, that's just something you just got to let that go, and that's hard for parents sometimes as well.
Yeah, my mom and dad did a good job of that with me when I was at a young age, of just instilling those lessons. Even I remember a time where I was not a good memory as a fifth grader, where my mom made me go talk to the coach and apologize to the team, like where she could have easily pretended, make me not do something, but she did. And those lessons still taught, are with me as a 45-year-old dude. And I always like the power of curiosity, and the power of asking questions really helps bring clarity to me, not only for myself, but also my kids, on this is your journey. Like I always say, dad was lucky to play football at Central Washinton and had a great experience. And if you'd have told me I would have done that in 8th grade, I'm like, there's no way. Like I was kind of unathletic, you're going through weird emotional puberty, but then you learn later about hard work and sticking to it and setting goals. And I think that's such good advice we just talked about. Is it's easy for the parents as us to go solve our problems and rescue them, but I think learning's in the struggle. And when we can let our kids face some adversity a little bit and power through it, we're building that resilience, that grit for lifelong skills they're going to need downstream for whatever they decide to do.
That's absolutely right. The resilience piece is so important. And you see this when they're going through college. I think, my kids have had some ups and downs in college, like many do. But that's when they're really learning to deal with that on their own a little bit. And so, we all make mistakes. And so in some cases, I maybe was a little, I look back on my kids, my two have been through college. In some cases, I was a little bit maybe too removed. I let them go too far by themselves and wasn't always there maybe when they need a little hand. So, trying to find this balance between when you intervene and when you help and when you let them kind of be by themselves it's a constant struggle to figure out what that balance is. And you look back and you think you could have done something better, but we're learning as well. That's the jokes, of course, are always that the oldest child gets all the experimentation and the youngest get the benefits. And so there is something to that sometimes, because we're learning as well.
What, as you said that, what might be an example where you maybe have let them go too far that you wish you would have done differently?
Well, my son went to college at the University of Oregon. We lived there, right? And so, I mean, I went away to college. People go to a different town, and so I was determined that I didn't want him to be, feel like he had to come see us all the time, or I would see it. And I worked at the university where he went to, so it was, I wanted to have him feel like he could kind of be away. And so maybe I went a little too far in the other direction and didn't check in with him enough and see him enough. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that might have been beneficial a little bit along the line. So that was a lesson I learned about, it doesn't always work out the way you want, and you've got to think about how to balance these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we had a playbook that gave us the answers to the test? Unfortunately,
that would be so nice. That would be so great.
I think if we show up, if we believe what we do matters, if we're trying our best, and then you give yourself grace but when mistakes happen, own it. I mean, this is like my business role when I teach like vulnerability, humility, and just relationship building. It's easy I did an episode early in this journey of podcasting of the power of saying I'm sorry, and how often do dads do that? And if you're a dad listening, and I just made you stop and think, maybe this episode's for you. Maybe think about that. Like, when's the last time you said, "Hey, dad was not his best"? Because I think when we do that, our kids sometimes they see this. You're this perfect person. Your mom, your dad. You have life figured out. But little do they know, we don't. We're struggling just like you guys are. We're trying to figure out ways to get better. I think more when we talk to our kids about that, at least we do in our house, I think it just brings a more real conversation of, and that just that gift of, you don't have to be perfect. Because I think in today's social media world, everything looks great, right? Everyone's smiling. Life's perfect, but it's not nowhere near perfect. And I think we try to create those moments of those conversations.
I think what you said is really important, that we recognize the mistakes we made, and then we give ourselves some grace, and we look forward. Um, my mom passed away a couple of years ago, um, and we had a lot of discussion just before COVID, and so we had a lot of discussions in our family about what that means, and so looking back and things we might have done differently. There are going to be regrets in life, and so I moved to the U.S. and my kids grew up here, and my parents saw my kids once a year. And so, they came every year, and it was wonderful, and they had great relationship with their grandparents. But, do I wish they could have seen them a bit more? Yeah, probably. And so, you look back at that and you think, how could I have done things differently? But they don't want us looking back. We can't look back, and we have to look forward, and we did the best we could. And so, my kids have thought about that as well, and we've talked about that a lot. And so, got to look forward. There's a lot to look forward to. That's the way to approach it.
I'm an eternal optimist, borderline naive optimist, and the best is ahead. It always can be. I mean, maybe it's the Uncle Rico moment here. Quarterback, and you're like 3rd and 46. We can do it. We'll figure out a way to get first down.
I love it. It's going to happen at some point,
right? Well, let's talk about. So you're in Europe. You're in England, and you said, you know what? Let's go to the U.S. Like, how does that happen? Maybe walk me through that decision and the maybe the anxiety of like, is this the right thing for me? But you did it, and obviously it's worked.
Yeah, well, there's a step in the middle there, which is go to Japan. So when I graduated from Liverpool, I just like my daughter wanted to get out of Oregon, I wanted to do something completely different. And so I'd been to Europe a little bit in college, but I had never been to Asia, and so this is a different culture and a different life. And so had an opportunity to join a program called the JET program, which the Japanese government ran, where they brought English teachers into the school system to assist some of the students. And ended up living in Japan for 3 years. Lived in a small town just outside of Tokyo for 1 year, and then in Nagasaki City for a couple of years. And it was an amazing experience to really try and understand a completely different culture. And then while I was there, I traveled around China, for example, for a month. And so understanding that China and Japan are the two most different countries I've ever experienced, the cultures and the people and how people live. And so, growing up in England, you think, well, Asia, but then you start going into Asia and you understand that, the massive differences within Asia. So, but I ended up meeting my wife in Japan. So she was a teacher as well in Nagasaki. She grew up in Iowa. So she was doing the same thing as me, but just coming from the US. And so we met, we got together, we ended up getting married in California. And our contracts were up in Japan. And so we had to decide where we're going to go live, England or America. And we literally flipped a coin. And so we said we want to live in both the countries that we're from, but we flipped a coin. And so we ended up going back to London for several years and lived in London. Our oldest daughter was born in London. But after a few years, my wife had been out of the country for 6 years. She had a new baby. She said, I think I need to go back to the US for a little bit and be close to my family. So that's when we decided to leave London and go back come to the US. And so I ended up moving to Phoenix, Arizona, which was relatively close to her parents at the time. But moving from London to Arizona was quite a culture change. That was big change in many ways. But I had a lot of fun in Arizona. It was something completely different. And we went from having no cars to needing 2 cars immediately. And the weather was quite a change. But we had a lot of fun there.
Wow. Yeah, the weather's, when I think London and I think Phoenix, those are not the same climates. Slightly different.
They're very different. And, it was difficult for me to get used to living in the U.S. When I went to Japan, I knew it was going to be different. I was expecting it to be different. But when I came to the U.S., I wasn't expecting it to be so different, right? But it was very different. And so I remember one time when I couldn't even figure out how to put gas in my car, because the gas pump was different and the thing wouldn't flip up and I didn't know what to do. And I just thought, this is such a simple thing and I can't even do this. How am I going to live here? I lived in Japan for 3 years. Why can't I do this? So, sometimes you've got to be more flexible than you think about how you're going to get through life.
Wow. Tell me how all those experiences, different cultures, now you see it, you've experienced it, you know it, your kids haven't. Talk about how those, just the different things you learn impacted you as a father. Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox. I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafoods who continue to be just an amazing loyal sponsor. And for those of you who've tried it, thank you. For those of you who haven't, you're missing out. And now's the time to make sure that you visit catchsitkaseafoods.com and get some of those amazing smoked salmon. Get some of that amazing rockfish, blackfish, black cod, salmon, whatever it might be, whatever you like. But what's great about opportunities they have, now's the time to subscribe to a box so that you're going to get that reliable cadence of the best fish directly from the dock to the doorstep. And what's great about Catch Sitka Seafoods, they make it so easy. So those that maybe aren't the best chefs at home, who doesn't matter. They're going to give you this beautiful, nice laminated recipe card that tells you exactly how long to cook it, whether you're going to barbecue, you're going to bake, you're going to fry, whatever the way you want to do it, they're going to make it easy. So please visit them today, catchsitkaseafoods.com. Sign up for a subscription so that you know you're going to get the best fish delivered directly to your door. You won't regret it. And just like my daughter Riley says, Dad, I don't even like fish. And she does now because of my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafood. So with that, let's get right back to today's episode.
Yeah, so I mean, the most important thing for me is that when you live in these different cultures, I mean, you see that there is this kind of universal approach to human values, I believe. People want to have a family. They want to care for that family, and they want for the best for their children. And there's so many difficulties, that are in the world and for different reasons. But those values are universal, I believe. And you go out and you see that, and that's the first thing. The second thing is, I mean, it's interesting to grow up in the UK and then to live in the US. Obviously, US dominant global power. UK used to be like that. People in other countries have a very different perception of what that means when they're kind of on the other side of that. So this idea of kind of being humble and not being, that kind of dominant personality or representing that culture, because there's another side to that story. And people, it's good for us to understand that and appreciate that in different ways. And so I think putting my kids through the international high school program, having a couple of them, the older ones, had the opportunity to go to countries in Asia and Africa and really understand what life is like there and how it's different to Western civilization, Western countries, was really valuable to see some of this stuff in action.
Wow. That's what I was going to ask next. How many of your kids have traveled to different countries, and what was the impact for them?
Yeah, so I took each of them when they were kind of in 7th or 8th grade, one by one, back to England, just me and them. So it was a wonderful 2-week opportunity for me to spend some great time just with them, and then to see a lot of my extended family back in England. And so they had that opportunity. And then I took each of them I said, we're also going to go to one non-English speaking country in Europe. So a couple of them wanted to go to Paris, one to Barcelona, and one to Berlin. And so it was a really nice opportunity to add that moment in as well, in that kind of European context. The older two were able to take a couple of trips they both went to Asia. So one went to Laos and Thailand, and one went to Cambodia. And then the other times they went to Tanzania and Ghana to do some volunteer work, service learning kind of work. So they've had a great opportunity to see kind of the European kind of perspective, but also Asia and Africa as well, and understand some of the differences there. So the younger two were set to go to Madagascar a couple of years ago, but then COVID hit. So their trip is on hold, but they'll hopefully have some opportunity here while they're in college.
Wow. This is such a cool story, and what amazing life experience and the different cultures you've learned. And I'm sure it's allowed you to be more accepting and curious of others, and just understanding helping people meet people where they are. Because, I sometimes think if we only know American culture, it's all we know. But if you've had a chance to expose yourself to all these different cultures, I would imagine that would make you be more curious and learn more about people.
Well, it's just fascinating to be in a different culture. I mean, that first year in Japan, I lived in this town of 10,000 people, essentially the only non-Japanese person there, working in a junior high school. And you have to ask questions all the time, right? You don't know how anything works. You don't even know what the food is. You don't know how to order food. You don't even know how to use anything. And so, the kids are constantly making fun of you because they think, this strange foreigner and it doesn't know anything. And so, you just got to go with the flow with that. And then you get an opportunity to really meet with some of the local people to understand the culture. And you're just constantly asking questions. So yeah, you're right. The curiosity piece of it is huge. And really kind of taking that opportunity to learn in that way is kind of wonderful moment.
So going completely random here, you probably could appreciate Chevy Chase's character in European Vacation then.
I love that movie. That's fantastic. I love that movie.
Big Ben, kids, Parliament. I can't get left. Oh, so this is really random. The part in the airplane when he orders a Coke and he's like, and she's like, you want that in the can? He turns around, looks at the bathroom. He's like, no, I'll go ahead and take it right here. I did that in front of my son. He's like, Dad, don't. No. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, bud. It's going to happen.
You're going to do it?
Oh, I love it. We both laughed so hard. And flight attendant looked at me like I was a complete idiot. But I'm like, it was worth it.
That's great.
Okay. So you move back, you and your wife, which is that's another the serendipity of meeting someone from Iowa in Japan and getting married, which is like, what a heck of a story.
No one's ever guessed where we met. Yeah, I don't know if anyone ever will, but yeah, it's kind of unusual.
Yeah. Maybe with all that said, now take me through how you got into education, and then talk to us about life at Central and what does it mean to be the vice president of university advancement?
Yeah. So I remember doing that teaching in Japan and thinking that, well, this has been fun, but I don't want to be a teacher. I mean, teachers are amazing. They do great work, but I don't think that's what I want to do. But I do want to work in education. And what I think I want to do is really find a way to link education, the inside, the academy, to the outside world. And that could be something that I could find really interesting. So I started out when we went back to London. I worked in sales for a little bit, but then I got into that education and started out in the British equivalent of a community college, helping to set up internships for students, helping to find training opportunities for new immigrants and refugees that were coming into the UK. And it was really a really rewarding kind of experience. So really loved the idea of kind of linking this and showing the value that education can bring to society. And so that was what got me excited. Moved to Arizona and started working in executive training, selling and marketing of that, and really got recruited by some colleagues there where I was working at the time, Thunderbird School of Global Management, to move into development and advancement, and really didn't know much about it at the time. But what it really is really working with alumni of institutions and donors and philanthropists to really find ways in which those people can really help the students and the university that they're affiliated with. So we have a lot of generous donors at Central Washinton who want to support scholarships, want to support our students. And it's really our job in advancement to go out and meet alumni, understand what they're interested in, try and get them engaged and involved in the life of the university, understand their philanthropic interests and passions, and then talk to them about what we're trying to do to help our students, recruit students, retain students, have students graduate, and then bring those two things together, bring those priorities for the university together with the philanthropic and engagement passions of our alumni and constituents. And wonderful things can happen when you do that, because donors really want to make a difference in the lives of students and people. And those students can be so grateful. It can make such a big impact in their lives to get that one scholarship that they can then stay in college and then they can get going on their dream in a way that maybe they couldn't before. So it's been a wonderful career for me to be a part of that. And so happy to be here leading the program here at Central Washinton. We have a new president as well, Jim Walpart, who is developing a really exciting vision for what this university could be. And I'm just thrilled to be here and to be helping to be a part of it.
No, that's awesome. Well, it's exciting as a fellow alum to have someone with your experience, obviously working for Oregon, great school, big school, and to come back and share lessons learned. Obviously, Central's grown so much since I I joke that I didn't have helmets back when I played football. We used leather helmets, but like seeing the
That
locker,
can't be true, Casey.
but seeing just the locker room changes and, the new field and, all the growth and the new colleges built, and just to see so much change has been so fun. And I know that in even 10 or 15 years, it's going to change even more. And I got to give a shout out. I know when you and I met, Paul, a month ago, but there's a shout out to a guy named Jason Roundy. He's now working at a company called K-Force, where I used to work for 20 years. And he was one of the best I've ever, worked with. And he did such an amazing job in getting me back involved in Central. So I always will be in debt to him for that. And just meeting you, I can see you have the very similar qualities as him, but just curious and, patience and relationship building and curiosity and humility. It's like, I think those are the things that alums we want to see. So kudos to you. And couldn't be more excited to see what you're going to do for our beloved Wildcats. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for what you've done and how you've been involved. And in the short time I've been here, I've met so many alumni already, and so many people have said something very similar. And that is that, when I was at Central, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to make it or if it was for me. But there was one professor, or there were a couple of professors that really kind of took me aside and showed some confidence in me. And that's something I think is, makes Central special. I mean, there is that care for the students that has been there for a long time and is still here. And so that's wonderful to be a part of an institution that can demonstrate that. So I'm excited to see what we can do.
Awesome. Well, so one of the things I always like to ask dads on their journey of fatherhood, and you've kind of touched on a few things in your stories, but is we want dads to realize we're all on this journey of growth together. So like for you, raising your kids, you're at a different stage of fatherhood, but maybe talk about, a mistake you've made, or maybe an area your dad game you're looking to improve or become better that other dads at home might be able to relate to us. That conversation, like, oh, I'm going through that too, or, oh, that's how he did it. Like, and maybe just the talk about how you tackled the adversity and what you're working and how you're working to just become better and learn from it and grow from it. Tell me what comes to mind when I ask you that.
So there's lots of mistakes, obviously. I remember. Well, I guess the main point is how to have high aspirations and high standards, and have your kids kind of seek excellence, but then to understand what that means for each of them, and it's not the same for each of them. And so a very small example is that with one of my kids. I was helping them prepare for a spelling test one time. And she could not figure out some of the spelling stuff, and I got frustrated. And I just thought that, at this age, you should be able to figure this out. And I did not handle it well. We talked about that over, and I think everything's fine. But, I regret how I handled that. Because for me, it's just symptomatic of something bigger, which is, if you can't really spell a few words, is it that much of a big deal? Mm-hmm. But it's also about what I said at the beginning, so meeting people where they are and understanding the talents and things that people can bring that are somewhat different, right? So just because I think that, grammar and spelling and everything is really critically important, there are different ways to be good and write well and get resources and help that may be different from the way I would have done it. And so losing your temper and kind of becoming impatient in moments like that is not helpful. And so it's one example that I've always thought of about how I can approach things differently. And since then, I certainly did try to approach things differently with kids in different ways. But it's hard, you get back from work and you've had a hard day and you're tired, and it's stressful sometimes to be helping with homework in those ways. But we got to get through it together with grace, and it's always a learning experience.
I love that story, and I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing it. And we share. So my gap is patience. I mean, being a competitive person, I have to be so self-aware. I have to be cognizant of it. there's this phrase about that I work with in my friends at Limitless Minds. We talk about me noticing a difference. So that's when you notice you're not that best version of yourself, what do? Do you let it go down that path, or do you stop? Do you take a deep breath? Okay. In the end, is this my issue or is it their issue? And a lot of times I find it's our issue because we've not done a good job setting clear expectations of what an outcome might be. In our head, it's super clear to us, but we forget that everyone's not mind readers. And a story that you as you're saying that, you made me think my son one night, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I mean, he's up there doing homework forever. And in my mind, I'm like, what the hell is taking so long? And I found myself getting frustrated, and my wife was doing something. And I finally said, I went up there and I'm like, it's like 9:30 and he's got like 20% of it done. And in my mind, I want to be like, I literally almost like found myself snapping, and I was like, but in the end, that solves nothing.
Right.
And I had to like take a deep breath, and like the old me, like pre-quarterback dadcast, all these amazing dads, you included, I've talked to. That's why this for me is helping me as the guest. The post the show is like, I get to learn from all you. And then take something out of each episode and then apply it. And we went through it. We were patient, helped him. And then randomly, it's funny. Then last night he told me, he goes, "Hey Dad, remember that thing we worked on?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, I got 100 on it." I'm like, "Bro, nice." But I attribute to exactly what you just said is like, if I was not patient, which there's been plenty of times I'm not, and I think the lesson for all of us as dads is when we find ourselves doing that, we're not that best version of ourselves. What do? So I know I love that, and
I think you're absolutely right, and I love that ending. What do we do when we're not, and how do we react from it? How do we learn from it? So hopefully we do. So that's good to hear that you've had some of the similar issues, and we're all working through this together. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh man, if I could buy patience at a store and put it in my eggs, I'd eat it every day.
Love it.
Okay, so as we get ready to wrap here for our fun lightning round, if you were to summarize what we've talked about today into a couple, succinct, call it words or piece of information or advice for dads so they can be that ultimate leader of their home, what advice would you give to dads listening based on what we've talked about today?
I guess the first thing is to encourage your kids to go out and learn about the world, and so that might mean traveling and living, but it might mean staying exactly where you are. But there's different ways to go out and learn about the world and how different people understand the world and live in the world. I would really encourage that. And then while you're doing that, be humble. Be humble about who we are and where we are and how other people live and how we work and interact with our kids. That humbleness, I think, is really important.
My humility is, I love that word. I have just exclamation points. One of my coaches at Central, I'm going to give shout out to John Zamblin or Bo Baldwin. I can't remember which one. I think they both said. And I remember they told me, Casey, if you're good at something, you have to tell people how good you are. You're not that good. When you're great, they're going to tell you. And I can still hear that. I can see it. I wish I think they probably both said it, but I lived my whole business life. I talked to my clients about it. It's like, we're only good for 1,440 minutes, and that clock then resets and the new day starts. So you might as well stay humble because life will humble you. So just stay grounded because it's going to change. So
all the time.
No, I love that, man. Well, all right. This has been awesome. I've learned a ton about you. I'm excited to see what you're going to do at Central, but now it's time for me to go random and ask you anything that comes to the top of my head, which is a scary thought as a former quarterback because we all have a screw loose and all quarterbacks can relate to that.
I'm a little scared, Casey, but let's see what happens.
Okay. If you were to star in European Vacation 2, who would be your who would play you?
Oh boy. Who's the guy that played the young Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Star Wars prequels?
I don't know. Danny DeVito?
Sure, let's go with him. I don't know if it wasn't him, but sure. That was random, man. That was something.
Okay. Last book you read?
Last book I read was, let's see. Last book I read was, it's a book called What I Mean When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. He's one of my favorite authors who writes stories, but this is about his life as a runner and a marathon runner. And I became a runner recently, and it was just a wonderful book about running, the physical act of training and running, but what running means and how you can use that as a way to kind of ground yourself and take some time away from things. And I've learned a lot about myself actually from becoming a runner. And so that was a great book.
Wow. Love it. If I was to go to England right now, what golf course should I play?
Royal Liverpool, Hoylake, right outside of Liverpool. That's where I played. Windy, tough, but just a terrific course.
Okay. Predict the score of the next Ryder Cup.
USA, what do you need to win? 14 and a half.
Yep.
USA 16, Europe 12.
Okay. If you were to book a vacation right now, where are you going?
Where am I going right now? I'd love to go to Hawaii.
Good.
I've only been once. I going back right now would be great.
Can't go wrong with that answer. Favorite new restaurant in Ellensburg you visited?
Favorite new restaurant in Ellensburg. The Ellensburg Pasta Company is really great. Okay. I've only been there a couple of times, but I'm learning to like it a lot.
I would highly recommend a Super Mother at the Tav if you make best burger in town.
I've been to the Tav once. It's great.
It camps
you. It's a lot more upscale than I thought. Actually, I was expecting something a little more downscale, but it was that courtyard back there is pretty nice.
Oh, I've had a lot of good memories of the Tav. So shout out to the Tav in Ellensburg. If you were to write a book about your life, what would be the title?
Why did I go here?
Oh, good one. I like that. Why did I go here? Okay. And if I was to come to your house tonight, what is Paul cooking for dinner?
So I would probably try and cook up some kind of sausage rigatoni kind of pasta dish with maybe a little red wine or maybe some local IPA beer, depending on what your preference was.
Love it. Paul, you've made it out of the lightning round unscathed. I appreciate you having some fun with these random questions. Like I said, it comes to the top of my mind. It's been an honor to meet you. I'm excited for you. I appreciate all the wisdom you've shared, the stories you've shared. You've inspired me to want to learn and get my kids to learn more about culture. So thank you for that. I want to say thank you to all of our sponsors, Catch Sitka Seafoods. If you're looking for fresh fish dock to door, please give them a chance. They're a small company up in Sitka, Alaska that was dramatically impacted by COVID, but they're a resilient, gritty bunch, which those are two words that most people at Central Washington have. So check them out, Catch Sitka Seafoods. Also, if you're looking for a new home in this Washington area, check out Acme Homes, former Central grad, the Bob Cumming. He's doing a heck of a job. They're one of the top home builders in the state of Washington. But before I let you go, Paul, if people want to learn more about you, what's the best way they can do it?
Well, I have a LinkedIn contact, so they can find me on LinkedIn, or they can just email me, Paul.Elstone at CWU.edu. Happy to hear from folks.
Awesome. I appreciate your time. This has been an absolute blast. Thank you for becoming a guest on the Quarterback Dadcast, and I can't wait to hear what people think of this amazing story and the journey you've been on. It's been fun to listen to.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Casey. It's been really a lot of fun talking with you this morning. Thank you.
You bet.